Good evening, everybody. My name is Matthew Dirst. I'm the founder and artistic director of Ars Lyrica Houston. It's my pleasure to welcome you here this evening for our Italian Sirens program. With me on stage for this moment with the artist are our three singers and our percussionist. From my right, or your right, yes, from right to left across the stage, we have Cecilia Ceci Duarte, Alexandra or Ali Smither, Sydney Anderson, and Jesus Manuel. This program required at least three singers because, as you'll notice, the first piece on the program, something that I really wanted to include, a piece by Barbara Strozzi, one of our three or four featured Italian female composers, is called Le Tre Grazie, the Three Graces. And here you see the three graces. This piece has three vocal parts. Conveniently, a number of other early 17th century Italian concerted madrigals and settings of sonnets and other kinds of poetry also require three voices. We've included some more of those towards the end of the program. But a program like this that features 17th century Italian vocal music especially seems to need three singers. We're dividing up into smaller ensembles. There's a couple of duets on the program, and each singer is featured prominently in at least a couple of solos as well, so that you hear the voices in various kinds of combinations with each other. As a curator, it's always a pleasure to return to this repertoire because there are so many wonderful gems, and our decision to focus on women this year meant that we could highlight the contributions of several little-known but very important composers from the 17th century who happen to be female and who happen to be all Italian, mostly working in northern Italian cities, courts, and convents. These three singers, you may not recognize all of them. Many of you have seen Ceci on the Ars Lyrica stage before. She's been involved in a couple of programs, but tonight marks both Ali and Sydney's Ars Lyrica debuts. So it's a pleasure to initiate a couple of new singers to our routine. Jesus has been with us at least once or twice before and does outreach programs for Ars Lyrica along with Ceci, so he's a more familiar face. But I wanted to bring out the three of them to introduce them, to show them off just a little bit, and to get them talking to you about how a program like this works. I thought I would lob them just a few questions, and if you have any, we're happy to respond to those as well. Perhaps first and foremost, when putting together a program like this, it's obviously a lot of small pieces, many of them very unfamiliar to modern audiences, and some of them, in fact, quite obscure. But what does one have to do mentally, vocally, to prepare adequately something like this? Anybody want to take it on?
Sure.
Oh, Sydney?
Sure. I thought we were just going down the line. Yes, so wow, that's hot. So a lot of this music, as Matthew has said, is rarely performed in general. So even as someone who has studied classical music, a lot of this repertoire was new to me. And so it took a little bit more research on my side before even diving into the music. So, the normal process, which includes translating the piece and then learning the notes and rhythms and whatnot, started a little bit further back, so I had to research the composers a little bit more than I'm used to, and the texts were often in a older Italian style, so a little bit more digging there to really make sure you get the essence of each line and what the translation is. And I found that was actually the most inspiring part of this process, because these texts have subject matters which were set many, many times, by madrigalists in the past, but now having them set by women has a completely new connotation. So I felt like I was rediscovering these subjects from a new angle.
Yeah, going off of what Sydney said, it definitely took a different kind of preparation because I had never worked in early Renaissance music before. Going with what she said, I really found that what took me to the place where I felt familiar with the music and where I felt like I was performing it in a way that you guys would be able to feel comfortable with it, and simple and easy, was looking at the texts and seeing that the themes that hold throughout are very similar to anything we experience today. Say if I was sitting with Sydney or Ceci and talking about anything that these women who are writing this music were talking about, it's very complex, but it's also very human, and that's what really took the music to the next level for me.
Hello. Well, for me, I'm constantly impressed by how down to earth these women seem to be able to carry, the words through their music. I think the more we sing it, and the more the program develops, and gels together, I really like to see and feel, okay, yes, this was written by women. Like, as Sydney said, while researching about them, found out they were poets and writers and artists and teachers, and they were playing the lute and the piano. And so it's like, okay, they did it all, and they also were mothers. So, they could do it all at the same time and still find the beauty and enchant in every little aspect of life, in love and despair, war, the feelings, and even their love for God. It's, I think, very, very unique and a very different way than what we would see with male composers.
One important question that any instrumentalist or singer has to deal with in this kind of music is how to make music within a small ensemble that has no conductor. You'll notice that I'm sitting at the back for this program, so I'm not waving my arms. So how does one put this music together? First of all, how do you make sure that everything stays together? What kinds of things do you have to do as performers that separates this kind of essentially chamber experience from a different kind of experience? And I'm going to start, I think, with Jesus, since he has arguably the most invention to do, because nothing for him is notated.
Yeah, hello, I'm Jesus Pacheco. I'll be the percussionist tonight. And yeah, as Matthew just said, exactly, my parts are not written anywhere. You'll see me reading, however, from a bass line but my instruments, they don't have notes. So what am I really reading for? I'm actually looking for the sections and the different parts of the music. And what do I have to come up with? I have to come up with the instrumentation I'm using. I have to come up with the rhythms I'm using. And I have to really listen for those moments where the ensemble may need more support from rhythm or less and more of an effect, or sometimes comebacks on tempos and things like that. So usually playing in an ensemble like this is very special for me for two reasons. I'm an orchestral percussionist, so I'm used to have a conductor in front of me all the time. And I also, I usually have to play way louder and louder instruments than what this ensemble requires. This is a lot of what we call chamber music. We need to listen to each other, we need to be connected to each other, we need to look at each other. Any gesture, any breathing that we hear, anything could be a cue that will make or break our performance. So when we rehearse a lot for that. We rehearse the breathing before a phrase, the breathing before a section, not just the section itself and the notes, but how are we going to start together? So that's definitely work that needs to be done, and it keeps us all on our toes in a way, and you will feel that energy in the audience, how the ensemble is connected, and how we all are in a way enjoying each other's playing, because we really have to. We really have to be in each other's playing in order to play together and to be listening for those different nuances that this music has.
Sure. Yeah, I would just add that we've worked a lot with breathing and helping each other find the common entrances and things. And this was something that was new to me, so this was a very enriching experience. But you realize in working in a chamber setting like this, and also on these pieces, that even if the piece is a vocal solo, right? It's not just a solo. It's not just about me. And so all of the instruments have to be completely gelled together. From the very first breath, not even the very first note, but the very first breath. And it's a really exciting, invigorating experience.
Yeah, for sure. What I found most interesting about this from a technical side is the amount of absolute specificity that's happened throughout our process, either verbally or just throughout the process, where now in each of the pieces at any given bar, you really do know exactly who is leading or who is setting the tempo, and sometimes that happened organically, especially I think between the three of us, sort of noticing who has the leading tone, who has the moving note in each phrase, and listening to each other and passing that off, and then also making decisions to say, what would make this bar better is if I'll do this and then you do this, and that's what has made the process so much fun.
I think that's a big part of, about playing in an ensemble, the listening part, because it's never just one person that's the leading. So it's always like a dialogue. Okay, I'm hearing what you're doing. I'm going to respond to that in this way, or I'm going to continue the idea that you started. So it's very delicate and very subtle, I think, but it creates a wonderful effect.
Thanks, all. Great points. We have a minute or two left in case there's any burning questions from the floor for our three sirens or our percussionist or me. Anybody? Yes?
I wonder if you could talk about the instruments a little bit, which instruments?
Yeah, sure. You'll be seeing these more clearly, of course, once the program starts. Behind us here in the gap in front of the harpsichord are a long-necked lute called a theorbo, which is basically a gourd with a very long neck stuck on it, and a bunch of strings that play diatonically, that is one note at a time without any frets at the bottom end, and then with frets at the top end, much like a lute or a guitar, and a much smaller instrument that's a Baroque guitar, strung very much like a more modern instrument, that is to say, same kind of body, but a more intimate sound. And a harpsichord, of course, behind that. And the box that's sitting center stage, the light-colored wood box, actually has 3 ranks of organ pipes in it. It's one of the world's smallest pipe organs. Otherwise called a box organ or a continuo organ in the trade. These things are very useful because they allow the kind of sustained sound of an organ, which you otherwise expect only to find in a church. It allows us to recreate that kind of experience. And so I'm using it actually on the 2 sacred pieces on the program, both of the duets. Good question. I think with that, we're going to take our leave to go backstage for just a few minutes before the program starts. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for coming, and enjoy the program.